Welcome back to the WatchTower Film Podcast, the film review podcast on the Towercast Network by Cinephiles for Cinephiles. We're back at Aaron and George's Film Cafe.
All right.
I'm so happy to be here. We're so happy to be here. This place is a temple for us, a temple of cinema. It's a gem. With great people like Doug and Rebecca who fought hard to keep this place open. So come back and give them business. And get café de olla. This is café de olla. This is iced café de olla. Do you know how happy this makes me?
It's fantastic.
And it's amazing. So let's give it up, Reverend and George, for having us.
Thank you.
It's our 100th episode, and we didn't want to celebrate anywhere else. We celebrated our 50th episode here.
We did.
Yeah.
And that was a fun.
Halfways.
Yeah.
But now this time we got balloons.
Like this time we do have balloons.
I know. We don't. You can't see the bigger ones in the camera, but hey, look, medium-sized balloons. That's fun.
The budget went up a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you guys for coming out, for enjoying this gem of a film, what some people consider to be the greatest film of all time. Just like Citizen Kane when we discussed that. Especially this guy. But a lot of our heroes, this cinematic heroes, this did something for them to want to make cinema in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And let's jump into this. But before we jump into the film, I want to introduce who I'm joined by, my fellow co-host, Mr. Michael Alao, offering a cinematography perspective.
Yeah, giving you a cinematography perspective on a very heavy film. Oh my God, there's too much to talk about, but
Mr. John Eric Oster offering a acting perspective.
Yeah, for this film that's kind of got a dead.
It had an actor.
Dead.
it had a couple of actors. Yeah.
Oh man, these actors were vessels though, man. They served the film.
There's a point for them being kind of dead. Yeah.
Do you ever want anybody to call you a vessel, like after one of your performances?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I better be called a bus.
Oh man, a bus?
Yeah. Okay.
Man, you were a bus of cinema. That's great.
All aboard.
That's fair. I'd rather be called that. You know?
And
Mr. Austin Young, making sure we're sounding good on the ones and twos back there.
Woo! I love Austin.
Austin love.
We always say we want to do this, like put GoPros or do something, but we're joined by a lovely audience today, live.
I know.
Aaron and George, so give it up for the live audience. We're here to talk about a mammoth of a film, 1968, Stanley Kubrick's.
Do you mean monolith of a?
Actually, no. You know what? This is that's actually very appropriate. Because what does a monolith mean? You know, and that's what this film does.
Isn't it just like tall pillar?
No, definitely not.
Oh,
I mean, maybe in Webster's dictionary. Good job.
Okay, fine. What does monolith mean?
Here to talk about Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Man,
who's this the first time watching it?
First timers. First timers. That's awesome. We got some. Just based on my knowledge of who's here, some cinephiles, some filmmakers, some both, and then some just kind of general audience members who grace us with their presence to ask us what the hell this thing's about. And I'm glad because this is my fourth time screening it, and it was only until the third time I saw that I was like, oh shit, okay, all right.
Was this the director's cut?
Yeah. Definitive. There was no recuts. He was never that kind of director.
Oh, it was just one. There was just one.
It's one and done.
Yeah, one and done.
But I mean, every time that you've seen it, you've always described it being just like kind of a pain in the ass to go through. Like you
what?
Yeah, like you've never really enjoyed it. I think it's just because. Did you ever feel like it insists upon itself?
No, because you know why it feels that way? Because other cinema insists upon itself that was inspired by this.
Like Barbie.
And where you like Barbie. Yes, like Barbie, absolutely. And that's not just because of the opening scene, but you're seeking, through cinema, this amazing art form, you're seeking self-reflection, you're seeking reflection of humanity. But this thing does that as well as come down to the singular kind of, level and asks questions about yourself and life and time and space. We'll get into all of that. We want to welcome anybody who has questions or comments or ratings, especially if you have your ratings from 1 to 10. Come up to the hot seat. And we're never given the throne over there.
I thought it was the guest chair.
Just guest chair?
It can't be the hot seat.
Hot seat's kind of like, it's too intimidating. Hey, what do you think about it?
We got 1 minute.
We have Gabby.
Gabby!
Hi. Coming up to the stage. Before we get into our weird, dumb, complicated maybe not complicated ratings. Stinky ratings. We want to know what you guys think. So, Gabby, what was this for you?
Am I allowed to ask the? Oh, I'm doing a rating.
You do whatever you want.
I just have the question that the common folk that are not.
Absolutely.
Real quick.
What's up with the baby at the end?
Okay, hold on. Okay. First of all, I think I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Give us your rating, just on
Okay.
Oh, it's also your first time seeing it, right?
Yes, first.
Okay, so
It was actually, I was very entertained until the light part, and I was like, okay, let's go. And then the baby threw me off.
Cool.
I'm gonna give it.
Good.
I'm gonna give it like a 6.
Okay.
Which is good. It was very entertaining. I was very.
Muter.
wow.
I'm so sorry. I'm a common folk.
No,
remember?
that's great. A 6. Had you heard about this film at all through your life travels?
It was mentioned long time ago, but no.
Yeah.
Right.
My life travels. No, I haven't heard it though. Haven't heard of it in a while.
And that's why we do this podcast.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
No, it's usually like mentioned by like the snobby people in college
absolutely.
who think that they're better than people, like, you know. Yeah, like, you know, you're just kind of grumbling like 2001's the best film ever. And then
It
you're just kind of like,
is. Every movie was inspired by this one.
Oh my God.
It came out in '68.
It's weird though.
Star Trek,
It's
Star
not
Wars.
just the snobs. No, it's not just the snobs. But hold on. We're not done with you quite yet.
Okay. Okay.
It is the hot seat.
now it's hot seat, yeah.
I ask if you've heard of it because at least I feel like when I was younger, this thing was thrown around.
Yeah.
In conversation, especially because when my generation, Star Wars was revamping, and sci-fi was getting this weird rebirth in the early 2000s, and then people started wondering just how much this film became of an influence, and then you start picking at cinema and you start realizing that this thing was inspiring way more than just sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I ask. But the baby's what threw you off.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
It's
I was
supposed
like,
to do
I
that.
have no idea
Totally
what's
fair.
happening.
Should I shatter that glass now, or do we want to ask more
Well, what
questions
is? Are you
before?
gonna say
Yes,
Stanley Kubrick's
Okay, wait.
meaning or
Stanley
or-
Kubrick didn't have a meeting.
Exactly. I was gonna.
Yeah, I don't have a definitive theory, but
I do.
You do?
Isn't it like rebirth?
Sure.
Like a transition to a new humanity, kind of like a new.
Here's the short answer. There's no right answer.
Right.
And that's the way the filmmaker intended it to be. This was
Buzzkill.
meant to, and I know that sounds like such a blanket statement, but this is exactly what Stanley, the producer / writer of the novel of this film. This film's based on a. I don't want to keep you here. I want to explain this to you, but you're welcome to go back to your seat or hang out here until I explain this whole weird thing. But this film is based on a short story called The Sentinel.
The Sentinel.
This short story was written by Clark, last name Clark, William S. Clark.
Arthur C. Clarke.
Say it again.
Arthur C. Clarke.
Arthur C. Clarke.
That's
Arthur C.
great
Clarke.
right there.
He wrote the short story for a competition for the BBC, and Kubrick read it and was like, "Hey, I think this thing should be so much bigger, and we should work together on this." And then they kind of simultaneously, he wrote a novel, Clark wrote a novel, and Kubrick wrote the script, and the film came out before the novel, oddly enough. But the novelization is just expanding so much more on kind of the lore of the space story itself, while Kubrick decided to make it this, symbolic depiction of humanity from beginning to beyond. And the reason I bring that up is because even Clark said, he's asked time after time after time, what the hell was this? What was the baby? What was the ending? Filmmakers, scientists, everybody. And he said his exact words, I don't have the faintest idea.
Which is beautiful.
This was entirely
you.
Stanley Kubrick's interpretation left for you to interpret.
Exactly.
So my interpretation is very similar to Castro's, that sure, some type of rebirth, but more than that, the whole point of the monolith is beyond, period. Is that extraterrestrials is beyond us, beyond humanity. Is it extraterrestrials? Is it technology in the future?
That's your theory on the monolith?
That's what I believe, yes, absolutely the monolith is.
I thought it was sort of like a tool.
No, it's
For
supposed
advancement.
To, it's
Isn't
supposed
that
to be
what technology is?
No,
it's
yeah,
a
but
symbol for evolution and
Yes.
the next state
Yes.
of humanity.
Well,
every time it's introduced, it
We're in a
propels
different-
humanity into its next evolution. And I mean, even when you look from the apes to when we first see people.
This is important for the baby, I promise. The baby's coming up.
Because I agree. Yes. I was like, okay, every time you see it, it's different.
It's this next evolutionary step. And I mean, like when you see like the apes and then you see people for the first time, I mean, especially if you're thinking about like 1968, the evolution that we're seeing humanity get to at this stage where there's technology that we're able to just go into space without any issues. I mean, it's almost, they treat it like an airport at this point.
Yes. There's common space travel for sure.
Yeah. And then we have travel that, you know, we can communicate to people through video across like any distance in basic real time.
But let's pause there for a minute, because when we started the apes, right? Most people, most scientists through evolution believe that we came from that, right?
Yeah.
This is where it starts getting interesting for me, and why I feel like the rebirth is.
The wee-woos are coming.
The wee-woos are coming. Sorry. I don't know how much that's affecting the sound. That's why I'm pausing.
Yeah, let's just give it a minute.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Leave it in.
Downtown El Paso, ladies and gentlemen. It's so great to be back.
That's fine.
At the apes, right? The important takeaway from that sequence, or set of sequences, because we kind of revisit it a little bit later, is the bone. Used as a weapon, used as a tool, used as everything and above, right? And that's a representation of what the monolith is, the evolution of that. Because the minute he throws a bone in the air, now we're in space, right? We go from that to this. And oddly enough, the first thing we cut to is this nuclear thing that's very dangerous.
And did you see the little flag on the bottom?
Yeah. Well, flags. There's 4 flags, right? U.S., China, Germany, and...
Which gives you...
one more.
To take that as something like...
Sure. It's something of war, right? It's something of advancement and war and technology. So we go from ape primates tools to the tools in space, to the evolution of technology and tools and what ends up becoming that. So all to say that that's what I take to be the representation of this monolith. And because it's present in every space of humanity, every space on the board, that's why the ending is so crucial, so punchy, so important, because the character that we've been invested in, who may or may not, be dependent on the actor, it's because he's a tool, he's a vessel.
There's a reason.
We're invested enough to him to recognize him, right? To recognize him through these stages. He went through this massive battle through the tools that humans created. Is it a downfall? Is it a pitfall? Maybe. But we get to see him grow old. And then beyond. A lot of people's theories for the monolith too is that it's something left by people beyond us, extraterrestrials, that the only way to communicate is through this thing. It's a symbol so that humans can catch up to 4 million years beyond of someone else's technology. So why can't, I've always interpreted it this way, why can't the extraterrestrials, the thing that's beyond, come full circle to be us and start that whole trajectory all over again? Because a lot of scientists interpret time and space that way, being this circle. So that's my take on it, which is why the baby is so important. It's the point of life is for life to continue. So how do you do that? Reproduction, continuation of life, new life.
Since it was your first time,
Space baby.
What was your theory? We all had
That's
our
just my
wildest
theory.
theories from the first time.
Space baby.
First time seeing the baby.
Yeah.
What was your thought?
Well, he looked like an alien, so I was like, okay.
Okay.
But I was also saying, like, the monolith came in, there's an evolution, so at this point, either he was the chosen one or everybody was getting sucked into this monolith.
Yeah.
And as they come back out, it's the new evolutionary phase of human.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure, because I was like, I don't understand. This baby was creepy looking, so I wasn't sure what was going on.
I think that was just the take on special effects at the time. I don't think that's necessarily...
Big eyes, okay?
Yeah.
I've never seen a baby with big eyes like that.
No, I also feel like with that last stage, it's so interesting because we're always seeing them behind these kind of like protective layers,
right.
In their spacesuits and everything.
And the first cut, we see the fetal position. We see it in...
Oh, no, but I mean, like, even from the beginning, when we see, like, humans, we're always in these protective layers, protective bubbles. We're always in this, protective sphere, even though it's not, like, as vivid as the space baby. But each of those stages is us exploring and trying to get more perspective into life and what it means and what's out there. And, I mean, in that final rendition of life beyond, they're in this clear bubble that they're protected, but they now have full scope of everything in the universe. And I feel like that's got to be some final stage of evolution for all of us to have ultimate perspective of everything.
I don't want to call it final stage. I'll go with you all up until the final.
Okay, fine. Be that way.
Final, I think that defeats the purpose of him trying to say this continues. Period.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a matter of perspective. The fact that instead of just leaving it where we're in a void and there's nothing there except the space baby, like some kind of weird baby god, we're put where it's viewing Earth and this ultimate clear perspective, which I feel like that's what the space race was trying to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pushing the medium forward, which is odd because this is 1968. We land on the moon in 1969, and then there's this boom of technology.
And then Star Trek came out.
War,
Did I miss anything?
Almost the same.
No, but Star Wars too, man. Even the set design. But I think what's important to note about that is that it felt, Kubrick was always in talks with scientists and people developing technology. This thing was in development for 4 years. So in the midst of that, he's going to talk to people to say, do you think this is what we're gauging? This is kind of what things are looking like. But I do think that this film pushed technology forward just in general. Not just in cinema, but in humanity. People were inspired by this and said, I bet we can do that. Mm-hmm. And then, boom, we're on the moon a year later.
Hopefully that answered your baby question.
Thank you. Yeah, it did. Yeah, good insight. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gabby.
Now, I might be wrong, but I saw some behind the scenes of somebody talking about that Stanley wanted to put in the monolith showing them how to make fire.
Yeah, so instructions, right? Instructions to the big.
But then he said, that's a little too
on the nose.
Too exact, right? Too direct. So
that's where my theory comes from, it being a tool.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that even in the screening, the first screening, as our next guest lines up, the first screening of the film that was for the public. Apparently, some dude got up when he saw the monolith at the end. And he pointed at it and he said, "It's God."
Stupid.
I don't know, man.
I mean,
that's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah, but I can't imagine being
God is to be a God, or is to be present in every step of the evolution.
So he tells me he's here. I'm cool with that.
What bothers me?
Well, the monolith was there. That's the.
But he didn't tell me it was him.
See, I've watched bootleg movies where they're like on somebody's phone. You see people stand up in the middle, and I just can't imagine that this guy just stood up and they just said, "Hey, it's Jesus." That's the worst.
This was the 1960s.
Wait, you did that.
I know.
Listen,
it's not important.
To add to that, there's a famously in a group of hippies when this film came out who would go to see this film every day, right?
Really?
Psychedelics.
During intermission, they would go.
During intermission, they would sit in the front row.
It was perfect timing from the intermission to go to the restroom, do their thing, and before the whole wormhole hit,
Oh God.
the space ride, they would sit on the floor and get as close as possible to the screen as they possibly could.
Oh my God.
To experience the space ride. They knew, right, by the time we got here. So I don't know. I don't know if it's that far-fetched, but this was the age of discovery and using psychedelics to try to find some new perspective in life and humans. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know that it's wrong. I don't know that, especially, by the way, religiously, too. Religiously, we have this big boom of Christianity and extremists and Catholicism blowing up all over the world. I mean, just crazy religion coming up in various stages.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's also like a lot of like the new agey atmospheres, like vibrations and connectivity and all that.
Have one thing in common.
Yeah.
Find the point of this. Find the point of all this, including this film.
Yeah.
Ian stepping up to the mic.
Hey!
What's your point about this?
Well, first of all, congratulations on 100 episodes.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So me watching it as, like a young guy, not really a huge cinema guy, but I really enjoy movies.
Yeah.
I started to connect more into the historic aspect since, it's in the 60s, so the Cold War is a thing.
Sure.
And you see pretty much the characters that you see in the movie, it's either an American or a Russian.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you could see the influence of the time there.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, I actually did take some notes during the movie. And also during the time, if I'm correct, the New Futurist was an art movie that was barely coming up.
Yeah.
So you could see the influence in the set pieces, the colors, the whole, even the
Andy
ships.
Warhol of it all.
Yeah, and it was very interesting seeing how it was all implemented, especially the visual effects, because the movies nowadays is just like
68. Damn.
For 68, and right now we're in 2024, and it just sucks.
Yeah.
It's still old. I mean.
Yeah.
But
Also,
it's still
Kubrick had made Doctor Strangelove, and it's exactly about that. It's exactly about war and the technology of war and how funny it is that people engage. And that's what the film's about. You see the conversation happening of just how ridiculous war is and how ridiculous the men dressed in their costumes. I'm saying costumes on purpose in order to explore war and why it matters and monetarily if it's important and I need to have the better gun than that guy and that's the same filmmaker as this, so I think you're right about the war and the influence and the time.
And also, for example, as I said, me as a younger audience, right? And also, like, as you know me in a personal level, Carlos, how much I'm into like games and and I couldn't help but make a connection with the movie with a game called Starfield. Yeah, it's pretty much like if you play Starfield, you're pretty much with 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's the same thing, especially because graphically and how it looks visually. So
we were talking about Lethal Company during the screening. Oh, like, dude, this is Lethal Company. Like, this is Lethal Company, right? Even
a company just sending you into... Yeah. And also, the meme culture around. Like because pretty much this movie is very psychological. Yeah. It really makes you think, especially in the humanity. And that's pretty much a movie that nowadays, my generation, they wouldn't really enjoy because you would just be sitting down and you have to process. Your own thoughts, You have to make your own story. Like, oh, what am I thinking through this? And that's good it's a huge...
It's important to note, Ian is 24, right? 23. And I couldn't agree more. I love Ian to death. His generation is lazy. And now, just especially when it comes to cinema, man, we have to have this discussion. No, because they're cinephiles and they care and they actually sit here and watch stuff. But just genuinely, if it's not, another Marvel film or whatever, it's lost on them, right?
Yeah. I also feel like just talking in the perspective of like films that are coming out.
Yeah.
This is something that probably wouldn't be made today, and if it was, I feel like it'd be one of those like.
What do you mean? We saw Interstellar.
No, but Interstellar...
That was 10 years ago.
But Interstellar, I feel like, is super captivating. I feel like it had a very, like...
It took a lot from this one.
No, it did. But, like, the fact that this one just really lets you sit there. Like, I mean...
It takes its time. It takes its time, for sure.
Like, when we talk about, like, the visuals of the film, most of the shots... I was trying to think, is there anything here that doesn't need to be here when it comes to all the shots and composition? But no, everything that's shot here... It just adds one more layer onto the million layers at the very end, which make you believe everything that's going on and make you just completely engrossed in the whole atmosphere of it all. And something like that's saying, we're going to take our time. We're going to let the audience take its time. Even the intermission. I mean, I think during the intermission here, like, we all kind of shuffled and then looked at each other like,
fuck
is this what's going on? Like,
you feeling this too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
I want to interpret that as like, you guys have heard the term "a long walk for a short drink of water."
Oh yeah, bro.
This thing's a long walk for an oasis. It's a long walk to arrive to an oasis of questions and theories.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Reflections, right?
But I don't feel like stuff like this would be as marketable today.
It wasn't even at the time. This film bombed.
Really?
This film bombed badly at the beginning.
It just had hippies on the floor.
Back in the day. Yeah, it was a
MGM considered taking this off the theaters. It wasn't doing well. And then the theaters were like, whoa, hold up. We're getting an increase. It's mostly hippies who are doing drugs, but you're getting money for it, so just chill. And then that started this weird kind of, hey, have you seen this thing? It's crazy. Oh, how do you think of it? And they created a conversation. And then it didn't break profit for MGM until 3 years later.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But it became one of the most discussed films for its time to stand the test of time, right? Like people didn't get it at first. Of course they didn't get it at first.
It's still on the site and sample, no?
It is number 6 on the site of Talpole.
What do you think it wouldn't be able to be created today?
I just feel like this definitely falls in a realm of experimental cinema. Yeah. It's meant for the audience to put a lot of interpretation.
To the attention span of kids nowadays.
Even despite the fact that it came out 10 years ago, it's grounded.
Yeah.
It kind of walks you through it. It kind of because of the human side of father-daughter. I can understand this.
Are you talking shit about Interstellar?
No, I'm saying that it's much more simplified version of this.
Oh, yeah, 100 times, but it just makes it easier for the viewer.
Yeah,
exactly.
By us having somebody like McConaughey in Interstellar that we can always latch on to, and we can always see his emotion, his expression, somebody that he's interpreting the world that he's living in, compared to something like this. a lot of times we don't even see a person. We have to interpret the visuals that are coming at us. Even that whole scene at the end where all the lights are flashing and you're absorbing it. You're not, the character is not absorbing it. You get these little flashes of him, but you have to interpret. And I feel like
that's true.
I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know that people today, or specifically kind of a younger generation, will sit and watch 2.5 hours of this and walk out completely satisfied.
Yeah, I can come up with a list of people that they wouldn't really enjoy this movie. Yeah. But another part of it is, to contributing to the psychological aspect of the movie, is the score. It's
classical music, right?
It's very interesting because if there's no dialogue, you have this music that walks you through. For example, when the guys in the spaceship.
Yeah.
The Discovery, right? That's the name of the ship.
Yeah, and it's just the classical music showing like how refined it is, how advanced it really is.
And then also slice of life thing. It's almost a documentary.
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking. It felt like a documentary. And then when the monolith came out, it was this eerie song. Yeah. And every time it came up, it really, even the people around were like, what the hell is this? What the hell's going on? So
the emotional tonality of the music is
the balance between the narrative, between the dialogue and the score. I thought it was really awesome. It was really cool.
What's crazy about that is I in terms of visual scope of something like this, my lovely wife who's here, say hi. She asked me maybe 20 minutes into the movie,
why?
Is there any dialogue in this movie? It's just like, also, I was like, yeah, just chill. We'll get there. 88 minutes of this film. 88 minutes. There's no dialogue. Now, an hour and a half of this movie has no dialogue. You're forced to sit with the visuals and the music of this thing. You're forced to sit there and process everything. I mean, even from the most mundane details of like, okay, we arrive at the ship. It says Hilton there. It says Howard Johnson there. It says Bell and Howard. Like, okay, we're human. It's advanced. We're living in a society where there's hotels and phones, video phones, FaceTiming, in this weird kind of working spaceship. And it's expensive, but it's common. That's what we know. You start to pick up. And Austin, who's first-time viewer as well, was asking me, okay, am I missing something? You're not missing anything. It's straightforward. Don't try to interpret any of it. Just live with it piece by piece and know that most of it's mundane until it's not. Yep. And that's it. That's like, you can't do that with, people are so fucking mind-boggling to me because people complain about dialogue and having so much dialogue in cinema, and then people complain when you have this and have small bits of dialogue that are just kind of just pushing the story forward. But how do you not get lost in just the world building and living in this thing by visuals and music? Yeah. Period. That's it. At its most foundational level.
Isn't that also part of being like the astronaut? It puts you in the astronaut's feet where it's like, it's a long, ride over there.
Yeah.
That's why they have those, that dead acting where it's like, yo, I'm just waiting to get to the other side.
Militaristic, right? Like you have to go in with a mission. If you die on this mission, this is what you signed up for. So you have to be on this thing.
Another thing I just thought about it when you were saying about classical, the last room at the end, it was like a classical Victorian.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was just so the human could be comfortable, or?
Oh my God! I mean, everything's up to interpretation, right?
That's up to interpretation.
I would say that it comes full circle, right? Anytime the depiction of the future, it's not always stainless steel and whatever, right? It could be that it comes full circle for humanity. Even now, architecture, right? Architecture has influence from the Victorian era, from different stages of architecture, right? We're in 2024, and these styles were developed in
I'm thinking of why did they pick those to make him comfortable?
I think it's I don't know if it's about comfortability as much as it is about a commentary on class and the stage of humanity of where it's at currently. It feels futuristic. The floor is lit. The floor, but it's also giving us a little bit of history even in the set design of humanity.
I feel like also when you look at that kind of interior design, it's the most commonplace compared to everything else that we've been seeing. We've been seeing these machines and metal and space and future, and
just to bring it down to a level.
That's the only one that feels like when you see the sink, you're like, oh, that's a sink, and then that's the towels next to the sink. It's the most comfortable visually but yet it's still kind of eerie and it's still futuristic.
Also, this man directed Barry Lyndon. Like, it probably was just him saying, like, we got to pick a style for this thing. Let's just go.
I can't go with that. I can't go with that.
No, I feel like it's something that regrounds it because then for the longest time, especially like when we see the images of food, right? Mm-hmm. The food is always either like the first depiction of food is this like either grotesque like meat chunk that the monkey's eating. Then later on, they have the plate where they're just sipping on they're sipping on carrot slime, and then later on they're like eating a mash that's warm or something like that. This is the first time that we see him like eating with a plate,
like food as we know it.
Yeah, and it's the most
that's
like,
what I was thinking, like
grounded and everything. But I mean, like
that's why you connected that to the comfort aspect of it all.
Yeah,
but this I don't think that's quite the way to connect it to us. Maybe you got comfort of it. This dude's from the future. This dude has already saw food in its evolution.
Bowman?
What do you mean?
Bowman, the guy?
Yeah, yes, of course. He was on the ship with Slurpee food. So, like, that wasn't going to bring him comfort. You know what I'm saying? That brings us comfort.
That is true.
It brings us comfort of, like, he's on the ground
but maybe
in a house. You know?
The comfort of being back at home, like, in the world.
And maybe, again,
I still think it's just making us comfortable in this.
Some people describe the monolith also as supposed to be this object that comes in right when you're at like your worst, like when everything's about to fail and it saves you. So I mean,
again, another commentary on like, there's a plague and half of humanity dies, so it'll keep going. Like, it's in every stage of humanity. We all think the atomic bomb is going to end humanity. We all think that whatever. And in every stage of humanity, we just persevere. It's just going to keep going. Life will be life, and it'll continue to be life.
You're a little too confident with that.
Yeah, of course. I think that's dude. I've analyzed this film for so long.
So have I.
Okay.
That's how I feel about it, right? Just again, the monolith coming in different stages where we think the world is going to end, or the universe, or humanity, and it won't. And life finds a way.
To bring it back around, Ian, do you have a rating on this?
Oh, hell yeah, brother.
You're too confident. It makes me uncomfortable.
Keep that in there, I'll say.
So, I really enjoy the psychological aspect.
Yeah.
Because if a movie makes me think, it was really worth watching.
Absolutely.
It was worth all my time.
Beautifully put.
So, in the psychological aspect, I feel that the whole movie was like, you interpret it the way you want to interpret it.
Absolutely.
And you make your own story. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that you're going to take away from this. Whatever you think the monolith is, whatever you think the baby is, whatever you think the colors is, the trip from the beginning to end, you just take your lesson, because everyone's going through a situation, and what you watch and what you take away from is like, this is the lesson I learned from the moment that I'm in, just like you said with the monolith.
Yeah, some people will interpret this like, we're screwed. And then other people interpret this like, well, there's hope.
We're saved. Yeah. So I would end it with like an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
I would end it with an 8 out of 10.
This was your first time, right?
That's acceptable. That's acceptable.
That's acceptable. Fair.
6 Thank over there. I don't know who said 6.
Give it up for Ian. Thank you, Ian. Anybody else? Anybody else want to come?
It's such a hot seat tonight.
It is.
My God.
Especially with this guy right here. Look at this guy.
Dang,
Introduce yourself.
Tell us your name, brother. I think
Danny.
My name is Danny. Danny Nunez.
I think this is your first time here, right? Like, at least with the podcast.
No. I mean, with the podcast. Yeah, I've been to this cafe a few times. It's my first time actually watching the movie too.
Oh, cool. Man. Awesome, man. So give us your thoughts. Give us your rating first.
Thoughts.
Rating. I don't really have a number for it, to be honest. I would rate it a picture frame emoji out of 10. Because
picture frame emoji.
I got it.
That's fair.
I got it.
Completely fair.
In my interpretation of it, I thought it was totally like complete art. There's a lot of art out there, like kind of ahead of its time. I thought this movie was like that, like very ahead of its time. Mm-hmm. You know, it told this beautiful story.
It's probably still ahead of its time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, still, honestly. A lot of people will not understand it at all because of how, blatantly artistic it is. Yeah. In my opinion. I thought that it told the story. I noticed like every part of art is in it, music, acting, storytelling, dance, even dance. Like when she has like the grip shoes and she's going, she's kind of dancing.
That's what it was.
She's kind of dancing her way on going. That's how I saw it. I thought it was cool.
That?
Yes, except to shatter the glass a little bit. That was happening in most of these corridor scenes because the actors were literally walking on track.
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
like literally walking on track because they couldn't hide the tracks. They were shooting these anamorphic lenses. But I'm sorry, I don't mean to shatter the glass. That's part of it.
I mean, like you said, we all have our interpretation. Even when knowing that, I still see it as a dance. I'll go home doing like this to music sometimes or something. That's great.
That's hard not to, especially people are using this as gems, this vessel, right? This ship as a gem, as a, you have to keep yourself kind of sane. And if some connection to your home planet is dance, music, whatever, I wouldn't think that's so far-fetched, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's... everything else about it too was like I don't know. It was kind of surreal. It was like a Dali painting, kind of Van Gogh.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you know about the Van Gogh's paintings. They weren't discovered until 200 years later.
After his death.
Way after his death. Because people who saw it at the time, they didn't understand it. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
They thought, oh, this is crazy.
It insists on itself.
It does.
Yeah.
and like what I feel with these kind of films, because I originally came from more of an art and painting background before diving into filmmaking. I feel like it's meant to really,
You did?
Yeah, I did a painting. I did 2. I am the I'm the definition of an artiste. No, but
I love you even more, Michael.
No, but I
all right, cut your ear off then. Cut it off right now.
And paint something with your...
Well, but I came from more of an appreciation in that regard before I came for an appreciation in filmmaking and in now that I've evolved to the stage I'm at now, I still feel like when you look at this, it's the same experience I have when you're looking at a painting at a museum. You just sit with it for a while, and at first you're looking at the technique and everything they used, but then afterwards you're just so engrossed by the colors and the motion and everything that's going on in front of you that it just it only begs for you to reflect upon it as opposed to you're trying to instill some kind of I guess you said numerical value, that it's just meant to
There's
exist
no tangible
here.
meaning.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's why it's a picture frame rating out of not even a number.
Because
it's so broad and so out there that it's like you guys have mentioned before. It's probably meant to not be taken as serious as everyone's trying to interpret it or something or analyze it.
And then for us,
you know what's funny is we always talk about our lists and what we deem as cinema and what we deem as this vault cinema, right? Where if we stick it in the vault and bury it for 10,000 years so that people or animals or the lizard gods or whatever people believe in are going to... Yeah, you love those dudes, right? Are going to dig this thing up and discover what 10,000 years prior was doing. This thing would be at the top of the list. Because I think even then... it would be ahead of its time. I think even then it would have to have some interpretation of this intelligent life form, right? That could interpret something or try to interpret their own being,
Maybe it might confuse the hell out of them.
Maybe confuse. I hope something.
So. Yeah.
But then they'll watch it 10 times and be like, okay, this is what it means to me now.
And I feel like the more I've seen it, the more it's less of me trying to explore what's the meaning of the film, and what are these little pieces are? Because when you first watch it, that's what you want to zoom in on. You just want to zoom in on all the little details. Okay, he's running in this little space ring, but he's also shadow boxing. Why is that a part of his personality and everything? And then the conversation later becomes that there's a question of what's next for us. What's next
crazy.
for...
Now that you mentioned that in and of itself, that shot, right?
Yeah.
He's shadow boxing. Well, he's about to fight the machine he's running in.
Yeah.
And shadow boxing as he's running,
Yeah.
And
foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing, maybe. Yeah, exactly.
How are you gonna fight Hal?
He killed Hal. What do you mean? How are you gonna fight Hal?
He didn't punch him,
dude. That, by the way, while we're on that murder, if you will.
Oh, bro.
The most heart-wrenching, non-violent murder in cinema ever.
Fun fact: does anybody know the song in
Daisy?
Yeah, Daisy Bell. And the fun fact about it.
I think. Are you gonna bring up the one from?
That was the first song.
The bell thing in a computer.
In a computer song. By the computer.
Yeah.
In a IBM computer. That just to test if a computer could interpret words and read words.
I found that fascinating.
Also, the other side of that coin is that there's 2 words in the song right before Hal dies. He says half crazy. And that's a big thing to interpret about Hal. Yeah.
He's only half crazy.
I mean, he does good. Again, like any technology, right? Especially in the AI age that we live in, it's half great, amazing tool, and it's half gonna take over 10,000 jobs.
Well, Grizz has a big point on that, so we'll wait on that.
Yeah. We'll get to the AI point. But anyway, sorry. Yes, you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
Danny. I think that's a great interpretation. The great interpretation of no interpretation or your own interpretation, for sure.
I love the universal, like, philosophical aspect of time and life and all that
time
stuff.
and space. And
like, I kind of picked up on what you said about it being a circle.
Yeah.
And all that, you know,
like a
like, and it makes a lot of sense for, you know, we see the dawn of man all the way going back to the rebirth, like how you said. You know?
Those conspiracy theories blow my mind, man. Like, I'm not a conspiracy nut, but I love a good conspiracy theory. And those conspiracy theories of humanity 2,000 years ago, we're not getting the full picture. They may have been way more advanced than us 10,000, a million years ago. And we're just coming full circle to like, oh, we think we're the most advanced.
Ancient alien.
We really don't know.
Yeah, we really don't know.
I think that's so cool. And I think that's what this is doing. It's like, it may very well just be the cycle of life over and over and over and over again. And we're just experiencing a minute little freckle.
Yeah, but I could kind of like crush that with, you know, we got skyscrapers and all that stuff. We're not,
What?
We don't.
Have you seen Metropolis?
We
Made in the 1920s?
But I'm saying, like, compared to pyramids, you know, those little things, those little 3 things. But I'm saying, compared to, like, you guys saying these are advanced, we did way better than that, and we haven't discovered anything like that.
Dude.
We discovered pyramids.
The only thing humans did in connection to the pyramids was steal the gold at the top of it.
Did the pyramids, did they have lights, and did they have little wheels?
Dude, there's even, like, conspiracy theories about the pyramids being there's a missing puzzle piece of being connections of energy and life. And like,
but that hasn't been proven.
No, but you're not right. But like the coordinates of where the pyramids are and where they stand in conjunction to the other pyramids of the world. There's so many things
for them. That's all they saw. So they can
I have a small question. Do you like think about this and then go to your wife and like sweating at midnight? And then say like, Sandra, I looked into the pyramids and I gotta tell you, do it.
Oh, she says I talk in my sleep, and that's probably about the pyramids.
The pyramids.
Kubrick. No, this is why I shouldn't have. This is what cinema. This is why I shouldn't have access to a Criterion subscription, because I walk away with films like this, and I'm like, it's fucking up till 2 a.m. like bothering, like, hey. You know what just happened in the other room? Yeah, it's fucking.
Did you just see the latest one-car wide?
Yeah, I just in connection to what you're saying, I think that full circle thing for me is just as much as we want to think we're moving forward, maybe we're just going in a circle. And that's not a bad thing. We're making the circle thicker and bigger, and then it becomes the everything bagel from everything everywhere all at once, right? Like, I think that's what humanity ends up becoming, man. It's crazy.
When you think about it, we're all still technically Neanderthals even today. We still use the earth to make everything that we're looking at.
We're just somebody else's monkey, but we don't even know it yet.
Dude, you know how many times I think about I tell this to Castro all the time. Like, you know how many times I think about us being the marble in Men in Black? You know?
Oh, me
like
too.
the ending thing. We're not just the marble, just the fucking
the little thing on the dog.
Yeah, man, it's insane. Yeah, Orion's bell, right? Like just the little crazy.
I've never seen Men
Danny,
in Black.
thank you so much.
Danny, hell yeah.
All right, who's up next?
Next up,
Any takers?
Eric. The man. Time traveler.
Short time listener, short time sitter.
I feel like it would be a crime not mentioning the production design.
Oh, absolutely.
And how it works with the cinematography specifically.
Oh,
like
my
this,
God.
the briefing scene when he first gets into there and he meets his team. Like, Jesus Christ. Did you guys see the walls? Those were the lights. Those were practicals. Those weren't like walls. And that being the main source in the whole entire film,
Right.
I mean, in that whole entire scene, still lighting everybody perfectly fine and everything. That's just gorgeous.
This is the crazy part.
That is true.
Kubrick is known to be a control freak, like most directors. The cinematographers stated very much hating working with Kubrick. Most cinematographers stated like hating with hate working with Kubrick, because he'll basically say, "This is a setup. This is how it's going to go about. Go light it." And that's all their DP gets to offer. And the DPs are like, "Well, I didn't feel like I contributed any cinematic value to this. This is all your vision. Fine, I'm just going to go play with my lights." And and it has to become so important at that point, right? Because you have so much time, and you either choose to use that time to be creative, or to let someone else do your job.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the production. I mean, there's stories of Kubrick going to the costume designers and spending hours on the fabric of what the characters were gonna wear.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get lost on me that you're gonna sit there and look at a light and be like, huh, that's cool. Moving on. But Kubrick will be like, no, not moving on. This thing's shot for the special effects shots alone, man. And these sets were built 18 months just for the special effects, just for the non-human scenes.
Just objects.
Mind blowing, man.
That's
I
insane.
heard the main one. It was a 15-foot tall model. What was it called?
The monolith.
The spaceship that they're in.
Oh, the Discovery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a 15
It was
foot.
an actual set. Yeah, it was an
Yeah.
actual set. At one point, they took over every soundstage in these London studios, MGM Studios in London. That's where they shot the film. And at one point, every soundstage. Have you ever stepped in the soundstage? They're fucking huge. They're like huge warehouses. It's so mind-boggling that each of these things were taken over just to produce this film. The only thing that wasn't shot on the soundstage was the opening scene.
Yeah. Another thing that was like massively fascinating was like the scene when he was entering the Jupiter orbit, or actually no, the scene where he was arguing with Hal.
Yeah.
As he's tinkering with what's happening inside of the pod, the lights are changing on his
Yeah.
face, and that
Projection.
And then the way that happens in the murder scene as well when he's killing Hal, like the lights turning on his face like one by one. It's just
It's almost like blood, by the way.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah,
Blood splattering.
It's like AI's blood.
Yeah.
You're fascinated by it.
Damn,
I was
I
telling
never thought
Austin,
about
I was like, fucking Jon Favreau, man. He's stealing methods, not giving Kubrick credit for like rear projection and front projection, and because in The Mandalorian, that's the big splash in filmmaking and storytelling was like Jon Favreau discovered this new way of shooting. No, he didn't. This is we see it here.
Yeah.
On 16 millimeter projectors, by the way. Do you know how hard it is? It's crazy. Yeah, dude, I agree. And the set design is exactly that, right? It's these minute details. I was also telling Austin, if you go to like Disneyland or Disney World and you get to Galaxy's Edge and you walk through like the Empire and the entrance of where the ships land or whatever, dude, that's this. Like that's exactly like frame by frame Star Wars stealing.
Telling you.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
I think the reference between Star Wars and this movie was very obvious when they were like docking the ship.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Like that was, I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, like the rectangular like
Yeah.
opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The dudes down here, the other guys up here. That
And
was
it's like
very-
such a basis now for like everything. Like
Yeah.
everybody uses the imagery from here when it comes to like the docking stations and the way they look, or the way the ships just kind of float on through space.
One
like,
of the biggest things that Kubrick wanted, he went up to his producers and said, I want to make a sci-fi film that looks real. Whatever that means. Because there was such bad examples of sci-fi films up until that point. Sure, they were entertaining, but they didn't look real. They did nothing for advancing the genre in everything, in set design and
Special
in
effects.
cinematography and special effects. It did nothing for the most part. So Kubrick was like, no, let's take all this time and money, $10.5 million, and of the $10.5 million, 60% of it is going to be used on the special effects and the set design.
I heard the hamster wheel was like 60. Well,
In and of it, yeah.
in today's standards, $6 million.
oh my
itself.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 750, I think, back in the day.
Just to make a human
It's
sized
an interesting balance, and I think it sets a precedent. Maybe every sci-fi film from now on should use 60% of its budget on that.
Honestly,
I
that's
mean,
kind of a
there's
good call.
something to that.
So
Perfect formula, maybe.
you guys are cinema freaks as well. Who do you guys think won the battle? This movie or Solaris?
Oh, gosh.
The George Clooney?
No, not the George Clooney. Oh gosh,
Hilarious.
the German expressionism, man. Oh gosh, this one. The short answer is this one. But Solaris is so like, oh man, it's mind blowing too. But on a more psychological kind of, yeah.
Going
shit.
back to like the 1960s,
Yeah.
I mean, you got Andrei Tarkovsky going against Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
That's literally USA versus USSR, both
Yeah.
making kind of the same style of film.
German Russian expressionism. But yeah.
That is cool.
This is, I don't know, I love this movie.
Yeah,
This is my
Tarkovsky-
first time
I
seeing
don't know,
it.
man.
What's
Really?
with it?
What's up?
No, I'm saying really.
Yeah. I've never
crazy.
seen this before. I think I saw it one time.
But you've seen Tarkovsky before.
Yeah, I love
That's
the movie.
one way to go about
I
it.
know.
No,
So roundabout.
Yeah. I saw it one time, but I woke up like around the time that he was arguing with Hal, so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna turn this off. But actually
Yeah.
sitting down and watching it, and it was
Oh,
To
dude,
me, a 10 out of 10.
I wouldn't feel bad. I'm telling you, you can go back to previous episodes of this podcast, and maybe before episode 30 or something, where I trashed this film so much, and I'm like, dude, even Spielberg thought this film was overrated at first. Keywords being at first, right? Like I fell asleep probably through the first screening of this, and then you watch it a couple more times, like, okay, maybe he's got something. And you watch it a few more times, like, oh, holy shit, okay.
I got a quick question for all three of you. Have you ever had a hippie phase in your life where you kind of see this movie and it feels like English?
That's pretty interesting.
I think I'm there now.
No,
Yeah.
I think I'm there now, but I think it has everything to do with you developing your palate in cinema. Right? If you've seen Tarkovsky and then you watch this, it's not that bad. It's
Yeah,
not bad. It's mild, right? Compared to Tarkovsky or a lot of expressionist movement,
that one.
French New Wave cinema. We're just talking about the Three Colors trilogy, which either comes out after this episode or before. I think it's after.
We'll take a couple
In 2 episodes, but we were just talking about the Three Colors trilogy and how it. I mean, the Three Colors trilogy,
It's
and
3 episodes.
and it's postmodern French, not new wave, but expressionism, and but very grounded and very humanistic. But then you go back to Godard, and then you go back to Truffaut, and you're like, dude, what the fuck? Like,
I just feel
they're
like,
good.
I just feel like a lot of those films, it's meant to be a very interpretive experience. Where
Right.
this is more of an experience machine, if you will.
Sure.
Like
And then you interpret your experience.
Yeah, like I mean that whole this is if you allow yourself to just really sit down and go through. I'm going to watch 2001: Space Odyssey, beginning to end, and just allow myself to just watch it. That's it. You're gonna go through that kind of like hippie psychedelic.
You know what the
experience
future
at
of
some-
cinemas is? People are like, yeah, man, go watch, like Costco, let's go watch Twisters in 4D and D-Box. Go watch 2001: A Space Odyssey in D-Box. Let's get that experience in cinemas, because it would, imagine that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you guys think that cinema is going in terms of like its direction? Like we all know that like at this point Marvel movies is spoon-fed cinema. While this is something more abstract out there where it makes you really think. Do you
much
guys
time
think
you
that
got?
we're going more this way or more Marvel?
I just feel like we're at a place where studios feel that the only type of cinema that
It's
they
too
want to be
risky.
funding is things that are palatable.
Yeah.
And then you are competing with all these different studios who say, we have money and we want to make our platform sound the best, but we have to just put out the most palatable. Anybody could jump in at any phase, any point in time. And as opposed to like this, where it came out for the sake of it being in the art form and we're going to see what we can express to the highest of our ability. I just feel like the only people taking these kind of risks are in the indie route, and sadly, those are not the people that are going to be getting the kind of funding to be doing stuff like this on a larger scale. I just feel like these voices are getting minimalized. They're not going away, and I do think there's a resurgence, kind of like we've talked about before. There's a renaissance of we're
Indie
starting to
cinema.
get tired of stuff that's just
Cookie
easy
cutter.
to chew on. Yeah, cookie cutter, and we're looking for something more meaty.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll hit a point where we're ready to start experimenting again. I mean, you see people like Ari Aster, and the fact that we watched Beau's Afraid in theaters, and
Had
that
to go
one,
watch it 3 more times because
Yeah.
it just on an experience level, on a scale level,
Yeah.
on the what the fuck happened in the forest level. If
That's-
you know, you know.
Yeah, and that's something that I
Yeah.
feel like in the horror route, at least, they've been able to take more experimental routes.
Yeah,
A24 has been able to take a lot of risk in what it's been able to produce, and there's a resurgence. But are we going to? Are we going to say that that's going to be the mainstream?
Yeah.
Like everybody's going to jump into it? I don't know, because I
I'll
still think we're still at a very palatable
I'll
era.
piggyback off of that. I've chosen to take a more hopeful, process through this, because it's depressing if you first think about it. If you're, a cinephile and a filmmaker, it's depressing as hell. But the truth of the matter is, I think we're in the Wild West again. And these guys in the 60s were in the Wild West. To the point where the studios were like, nothing's working. Let these guys take over. And I don't think that's going to happen again. But I think the studios that we end up like believing in, the A24s, the Neons, these guys, I think they're going to end up taking over. I think Netflix and Amazon and everybody is going to have no choice. Because sure, maybe traditional studios are going out, you go in the way of the dodo or whatever, but these smaller indie studios are going to end up being the quote-unquote content creators that streamers have to depend on for originality. And it wasn't an easy battle in the 60s and 70s for the Spielbergs and Scorseses. It was an uphill battle still. So they still had to convince people to watch their films and be content with not so much palatable cinema. And I think we're still going to have that uphill battle as indie filmmakers, but I think we're going to have more support from the Monkey Paw Productions, the Jordan Peels, the Ari Asters. We're going to have more support from those guys who are going to be the 50, 60, 70-year-old filmmakers looking at us being like, okay, these kids got something. Let's give them a shot. I also think it's just going to be done with lower budgets. Again, which I think is a good thing. I think we're going to have the $30 million. That's cheap if you don't know that. That's the $30 million sci-fi film. And I think that's going to open up a world of creativity. So I'm choosing to be hopeful.
It's like playing less is more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like we should just start a movement like watch your local films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minimalism is crazy, man. Look at something like Parasite, also by Neon, right? Like one location, very, very creative, forced to be creative with so little money, but still, I'm gonna flood a whole street and use most of my budget for that to prove a point. It's crazy. You get these filmmakers are paving a way for us that we aren't appreciating. And that's the problem. I think young filmmakers are not appreciating the paving that was done in the 1920s and the paving that's going on right in front of their eyes. And I think when we start embracing that, we'll be all right.
To add a little bit to that, I think like A24 and those studios, we need more of those. But I think we're not in the Wild West. I think we're in a kind of weird space where cancel culture is not letting a lot of writers, directors do their thing. So I think we're in that little patch of, are we going to get over that, or are we just going to have to censor our stuff? So that's what I think.
We get into this argument a lot where I'm just like,
Like
for me, it's like the boogeyman, man. If you don't believe in it, it can't hurt you. So
it's like with comedy. With comedy, I don't think we go back to the comedies we used to do back then.
Yeah.
I know cinema, comedy is not really intertwined, but
it's this idea that
it's still
like,
art.
Still art, yeah.
And I mean, the conversation about censorship in art has gone on for ages. And like, is there a real need for it, or is it something that we should abandon altogether? And whatever comes out, comes out. And I mean, in a weird way, we had this conversation before.
I do think we have to abandon, man. Look at this thing.
No, but in a way we have. Yeah. Like, I mean, we had a conversation before where it's just now, and I remember we had a whole fight about it, but I think that censorship is gone if you know where to look. Like, if you really want to see some, like, stuff that's just terrible, I mean, we don't have to describe it too much, but like, if you want to see some stuff that's really bad or really racist or really just awful in general.
I know where you're going with this.
You can find it.
That you can find it. You could just go on the right website or the right page, and that media still exists.
But it's still an extra step that they're putting on.
That's
so you
why
slap
we're not going to get into this.
You slap another 100 years.
But that's
we slap another 10 years. There's going to be another more step. I don't like that.
That's
why.
Go
listen to our Tropic Thunder episode.
And that's why. We have media right now that's more palatable. You have movies that are coming out, like the Disney remakes that they're doing, where it's just like, let's just make something let's make something that's safe and comfortable, and that's what I think we're going to be seeing in theaters more.
If this film is and this is the last thing we'll say about it before we move on, if this thing is an example of this film, 2001: Space Odyssey, is an example of anything, it's that it surpasses so much. It surpasses genre. It surpasses ratings in the sense of like
medium.
No, because it can only live in cinema, I think. So no, but my point is
cooking, bro.
Yeah, my point is, you don't sit here and think about 2001: Space Odyssey and think, is that a PG-13 film? Is that an R-rated film? Does it have things that my child can or cannot watch? Or does it have something that my grandmother can? No, it doesn't. The point is, I think good cinema surpasses all of that. Surpasses cancel culture, surpasses genre, surpasses palatability. I think good cinema surpasses all of it, and that's why it survives through time. Because you have to watch it to understand it for yourself. And I've also made this argument too. Like one time we were talking about Parasite, and I was like, I don't know, can't tell you how I feel about this. I might tell you in 10 years. I might tell you in 30 years after living life and existence and feel what I need to feel through this film. And I think good cinema does that. So I think whatever's happening in the world today, cinema's gonna live on, and if it's good cinema, especially, it's gonna find a way.
By the way, it's G-rated, so yeah, Graham can watch it.
Graham and Sonny Boy can watch it.
They can screen this at elementary schools.
God, I hope they do. Maybe that's what's missing in the public school system, Eric.
Second you have a child, screen this film.
Did you give us a rating?
I give it 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. The perfect dime.
I would if I have enough time, I wanted to ask about the performances, what you guys thought.
Eric.
Well, with me, I think
I think Hal did great. No,
Hal did great, but it picked apart for them, right? Because you're in space, you're traveling a lot. So most of their acting or the performances was kind of like deadpan, right? It's like you're just waiting for the next whatever, right? The next incoming call or whatever. So I think it kind of like went into that, right? It kind of like, you can't be so animated after you've been 3 years, 4 years in space, right? So I think it kind of lent towards their performances, right? It wasn't over the top. It was just kind of mellow, right?
Yeah, I think it's a key example of acting just serving film, acting serving a film, acting not surpassing the film, acting, you know, in The Shining, that's one of the things we talked about. You watch The Shining for Jack. You don't watch The Shining for too much else. I don't. You watch it for the performance, right?
Yeah.
Same with Clockwork Orange, by the way. That's why Clockwork Orange is my favorite Kubrick film, because I sit there and I see just the beautiful blend of everything. But I think that's kind of what's cool about 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's so big that you can't focus on the performances alone. You can't focus on one piece of this humongous, massive puzzle alone. And I think it's so rare to be able to pull that off. Yeah.
I had this idea coming up with the performance. I hope it's like not too deep or anything. But the way that I kind of saw the performance, or I hope that the actors kind of took it, was more so that these are the most advanced minds of humanity, almost so to the point where they're competing with Hal. And that's why they're so structured, so deadpan. So when you see him going through the lights and he's getting those flashes of like freaking out, not knowing what's happened, it kind of tells you like the intensity of how far even that experience would push a
it
human
has
being.
to surprise him. He's seen so much. He knows so much already that this has to blow his mind. Yeah.
Exactly. So then even when he's beyond the light, you're kind of questioning, he's older, he's staring beyond what is, and like the only thing that you want to know is why are we here?
Yeah.
And where is he mentally, kind of in a sense?
Crazy stages, right? Because I think the cuts are so important for that sequence, because he's staring out the pod into this room. Okay, we go from this to room. We go from room to person eating dinner. Person eating dinner turns around. Oh, it's me. Person eating dinner turns to bed. Oh, it's me, but older. You know what I mean? And person on their deathbed looking at the beyond. Oh, it's baby. You know, like it's these cuts are so important for the performance, to not oversaturate that.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
in all honesty, I do believe the monolith is God or the universe, whatever you want, a higher source. I believe it.
Same.
I think it's it. Because it's like, like you said, like it's the only thing that's consistent there. And even when you think the world is going to end, it's going to be prominent. Like when you think it's going to just begin, it's going to be prominent. Like it's always going to be. That's my interpretation of it. Again, there's no reason for anything, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, everything really, like, with all these interpretations, it really lends itself, especially watching the movie. Each time I've kind of gone back, you can throw a different lens on it just to see how it feels, and you could put the lens of God coming in at the right time, or you could put the lens of it's just the beyond. Some people put the lens of it's a portal into the next sphere of humanity, and I feel like each time you watch it with that, you're going to get an entirely different movie, and that's the joy.
And that's again that thing that survives, right? I think when I'm 50, I'm going to look back at this thing and be like, what do I interpret it as then, and so on and so forth.
It's a black stick.
What?
I don't know.
The monolith?
Yeah.
Just black stick.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty good take. I mean, oh shit, I forgot what I was saying.
That's how good this movie is. No,
the whole thing about
good.
Fuck.
If I just keep talking, it'll come to you.
About the scientists.
They're so advanced that they're hiding their emotions. Like they don't have to be so. They're just looking for their answers. That's a pretty good take. I never looked at it like that.
Because the way that I saw it is like, I'm not gonna lie. My brother and I, we lived in New York together, and we had this one week where we did this thing called Psych U. I don't know how PG-13 we're allowed to get.
You could do it, bro.
But within the span of a week, we took mushrooms twice, acid, and DMT. Mushrooms, acid, and DMT twice. So that kind of makes you think about your consciousness, and ego.
Are you sure it was only a week?
I hope so. I'm telling myself.
Are you sure?
Was that your phase through time?
Are you sure you're here right now?
I am. This is not reality. I'm not awake. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it starts to make you question a lot about your ego and how important everybody wants to fight it. Everybody has it. But when you accept it and you start to kind of, you stop seeing it as an enemy and you start seeing it almost as a tool.
Sure.
And that is what I feel like every important mind has. Like if you get these people like such as Tom Brady, like, he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest football player ever. And you might see him, he's probably walking around arrogant, but he's only doing that in situations where he needs to be.
Yeah.
And it becomes a tool. And I feel like that the same thing, the same sense of greatness that pertains to the astronauts here. Because you do have to like represent a whole species,
By the way, and to Kubrick's defense too, he has to believe in this thing till the end. Every director has to get to a point where everybody on set is going to fight them on it. Everybody in the studio is going to fight them on it. Every actor is going to fight them on it. Imagine being an actor starts a film and you shoot your stuff and then you have to wait 18 months to come back to set to finish the film. I mean, what actor's going to believe in their director at that point? But again, even the director has that sense of arrogance, or rather use their ego to say, I got to see this thing through. I committed to this vision.
Imagine Boyhood. Shoot.
Imagine Boyhood. Yeah, man. I mean, it's insane, you know? I think directors, and it's all over the film, and I think that's what might feel a little self-insisting of itself, because you have to.
No, yeah. I mean, because it's one of the few films that I think in a very wonderfully executed way explores all that is life encapsulated as one. And I mean, it's hard to do that. It's hard to try to give something like a vision to people on what the future is going to look like and what humanity is going to look like and everything. And you see people do like little glimpses where they say like, in this film we're going to tackle like how society might progress in like if we move forward in space, if we move forward in our exploration for, let's say, the deep sea or something like that. And it's these little glimpses, but it doesn't encapsulate the bigger questions of what is existence and where are we going and why is there a next unlike this, you know?
There's they obviously consulted with lots of scientists for the making of this film, and Kubrick consulted with one specifically on something, and I can't remember exactly what the something was, but the scientist was basically adamant about not using it the way Kubrick was trying to depict it, because he says, we know almost that that's not the case. And if we start leaning to something that could be wrong, people are just going to sit on that, and they're going to lean into that. Yeah. And that's going to inform bad truth, you know? And so we have to be as honest as we possibly can, even in fiction. You know
what? I even like that in moments where they could leave something, like I guess a crack through the seams. There's a moment when they're about to land on the moon, and the guy's like, okay, who wants coffee? And he leaves and he comes back. The cut happens right before he pours coffee, just so you don't have to have that visual of like,
what does coffee look like in space or whatever? I love it.
But I mean,
I
like,
bet you they thought about that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they're like, wait, would it float or is it going to come out as like slime? Because they
the
can
pan
give like,
thing, right?
Yeah, they could give like squares that they're like, oh, this is ham sandwich, this is chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
But the second the guy's going to pour coffee, that's when we got to cut it. We're like, no, leave that ambiguity there. So
because then you expect something like Burton with the Thanksgiving dinner.
I was on it. I was like. I was looking at it being like, I want to see that first drop come out and be like, okay, it's liquid. Like there's gravity in this ship and all this kind of stuff.
But for what, right? Let the imagination interpret.
Exactly.
Well, I feel like this whole conversation is the reason that this film was made.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Doing it for Eric, everybody. Thanks so much.
Eric.
A 10.
We got our first 10 of the night.
Can we steal this term of cinema freak instead of cinemaphile?
Cinema freak?
I kind of like it.
Why? So you can match my freak? Isn't that what the cool kids are saying today? Anybody else want to come up before we?
Yeah.
Grease. If you don't hear the morning radio show,
93.1.
this is the sound.
Dang.
Don't tell anybody my secrets.
Give it up for one of the biggest supporters of this podcast, and
these are some of my favorite nights that we have here at Aaron and George's. I love everything that Aaron and George's does, but specifically getting to come out here and listen to other people talk about movies and be a part of that, I love it. So thank you guys.
We love to hear you.
Excited about 100 episodes.
Hell yeah.
Okay, so I'll preface this by saying that when I first saw this movie in high school, I watched it 3 times in a row. I watched it the first time regularly. I watched it the second time with the actor commentary, and then I watched it one more time again just to go for it.
Okay.
And I got a lot of things from it. I gained a lot of insight on different parts of it. And I actually think it was funny. It was interesting, the question about the performances, because I remember it's specifically Bowman's actor, and I can't remember his name right now. But he is talking throughout the entirety of the commentary, and he talks specifically about how he was told that his character was supposed to be not necessarily stoic, but at this point in the film, his character was trained to the point where he could handle pretty much any intense stress, and that was an important point that Kubrick had told them, because specifically he was like, well, if you were in space, if you were surrounded by the vastness of nothing, if you were out there, you'd have to have the most calm mind possible.
You have to.
And so he
he told him that was sort of the idea. And if you notice it as you watch the movie, as he progresses through, once we finally get to Bowman, as you see him, he's put in a lot of these moments where he is, supposed to be stressed out, but he's so straight-faced almost the entire time. And then when we finally get to the point where he goes into Beyond, I thought it was a fun artistic choice that instead of us actually getting to see him freak out and scream, we only see it in those quick flashes. That's the only time that we ever see him actually losing control. And even once we finally get into that Infinity Room, this beautiful place that I personally I do agree. I think it was made by these extraterrestrial forces that are controlling him to comfort him because he just finds out
simulation.
He barely finds out. He just literally in these few moments before he gets to this room, he just finds out that he's not alone in the universe. There's other life out there. He just finds out that not just finds out, but he just finishes going through a Stargate. He's flying through infinity. He's experienced all these intense things, and then these entities that are forcing him to feel this, they're about to turn him into this super being or whatever the baby happens to be, right? So I think that was the interpretation from the novels, was the idea that these aliens, although they are toying or experimenting with humanity,
they're eons ahead.
Yeah, they're not doing it in a way that's supposed to be torturous. They're not doing it in a way that's supposed to be terrible or painful or awful. It's a way that is supposed to advance humanity, which is why we see the monolith in those key moments.
It's the equivalent of what people think aliens actually do. Is like, oh, they're going to take me and they're going to probe me. Yes, but not quite how you think.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, we see all these moments, and even when he's finally experiencing that growth, when he's seeing himself, even in those moments, even after he's just experienced the craziness that is flying through these stargates, this infinity, whatever it is, he still is keeping some of that calm. And slowly as he ages, that calm gets even more deepened. He's once we're to the point where he's eating his dinner, I mean, he really does. He's
accepted at that point.
Exactly. He's accepted for what, I mean, we haven't experienced time the way that he has in this room, but clearly he's probably been in here for a very long time, and he's just like, well, this is where I am now. This is what comfort is. This is what I'm supposed to be. And then he moves forward into the rest of it,
I also think if you wanted to ground that interpretation a little more, isn't that just life? It's a flash. By the time you're 90 or whatever, if you get to make it that far, it's a flash. And then you're kind of like not surprised by anything anymore. And you're just eating your dinner and knowing you're going to die in the next 10 years or whatever, right? And then you lay in your bed and you're like, well, this is it. We've made it. Like, that's it. That's a crazy kind of interpretation. I also think on the acting front, I think a lot about this when it comes to this film. This film inspired so much, right? One of the things it inspired was David Bowie's Space Odyssey. And when you listen to that song, it's, it paints this picture and it's a story. I don't think about Bowie when I listen to the song. I think about who Bowie's singing about.
Yeah, and interesting point on that. The baby is called, the title of it technically in the novel and in the writing is the Star Child, and that's what David Bowie was called.
David Bowie. Yeah. I think about that a lot. I think about what the storyteller wants you to know, and I don't think about Bowie singing. By the same token, you watch a film and we constantly ask, like, oh, you see Pacino or do you see this, or did you see Leo or did you see this? And in this scenario, who cares? I don't think, and I think that's pretty great. Same with Bowie, right? Like with Space Odyssey, at least, I'm thinking about the dude that's lost in space. I'm not thinking about Bowie singing about it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think the acting is a superb example on how to do that in this film.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on too, and I think it's such an important fact or a facet of the film, the cinematography and cinematography. I think is one of those things that's even more noticeable, like now, especially if you're really watching movies now and you're seeing the way that they're made. If you're the type of person, a cinema freak, right? Is that what we said? If you're the type of person who really watches films, and I don't know if it's the same with you guys, and maybe it's the same with you specifically, but I know when I watch movies, and I don't do it intentionally at this point, it's just sort of like the way that I watch them. I count seconds and shots. I see how long shots are, how many shots are in the movie in general. And I mean, obviously with this one, there are so many drawn out, really long shots. But the best part about old films is that there was a lot of that happening, specifically because they didn't have the convenience of the types of cameras that we have today. Yeah. So there was something, and I always call it the choreography of cinematography, the way that the camera moves, the way that the actors move on screen with that camera. Kurosawa was one of the masters of it. The pyramids that he would would create of depth that exist within those paintings. I guess they're not paintings; they're scenes in movies. Sorry, guys. But they feel that way when the right director does it, and it's Kubrick does this a lot.
Yeah.
There are scenes that I think I was even relating when I was watching it. I was thinking to Full Metal Jacket because for whatever reason this movie connected to Full Metal Jacket for me, and I hadn't seen it in such a long time. Yeah. But maybe now that I've watched both of them separately as an older person, there was something about them that connected. There was even something like almost thematically that like connected within them. This idea of humanity on a different level, right? And we're seeing it in these two different points.
Kubrick is this weird entity, man. Of like, guys don't understand this. Of the Super Saiyans. And Kubrick is whatever the big one is, whatever the
4 or 5,
six or whatever the best one is, because guys who we think do it amazingly, the Kurosawas, the Spielbergs, Fellini wrote a letter to Kubrick after this film. Federico Fellini, who to me is a hero of mine, one of the most amazing filmmakers ever to live, writes him an exciting note and says, "I screened your film last night. I need to express my excitement to you. We need to talk. Like, we need to talk. You have no idea what you just did for me." I think it's massively impressive to be able to do that and to use cinematography to that level. This is my short interpretation of where we live. I don't like our generation because we don't know how to be bored. We want to, even filmmakers, we want to go on set and we spend 12 hours on a set and then we know that we're looking forward to going home and watching Netflix. Or we know we're looking forward to going home, and as opposed to these guys, this was their life. Yeah. They didn't have the luxury of going home and being entertained by whatever. By even DVDs, popping in a movie was not an option. If you wanted to see a film, you had to make time to go see a film. Yeah. Right? In this scenario, you have time. You have time on your side to focus on making a good picture. I think filmmakers nowadays are just caught up in life and whatever's more important than being on a set to finish your film properly. And it sucks because the quality of cinema is going down because of that. Yeah. When guys like this, Kurosawas and the Kubricks, this was it for them, man. They knew what this thing was going to live on to be. And I think I do think it's the evolution of our generation. Yeah, I think it's the evolution of humanity, and in the arts is just a part of people now, as opposed to being just their whole lives. And I think that will affect the quality of something because you're constantly looking at like, I'm gonna shoot till 8 p.m. tonight and then go have drinks with friends, as opposed to these guys who were like, drinks? What? Huh? No, I'm here for 18 hours and then sleep for 3 and then get back on the next set, and it's
because you're obsessed.
Because you're obsessed.
And Kubrick was one of those people who was obsessed. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
Also, take it a step, I guess a little bit more grounded, like with us as filmmakers, and coming off of like our last film that we did, where a big moment was we did what they call like a murder your children cut, where you film a lot and you capture a lot of scenes and you're trying to get all these angles and you're trying to just give your editor as much to work with when you're making your film, so that way the whole vision can come across, and you're hoping that you didn't miss anything, so that way it's all there. And when you're with these longer films, there's always a question of like, did I leave too much? Is there too much fat there that we can kind of trim down? And we had that with our film. I mean, we had that where I think like the first cut was like 26 minutes.
27 minutes.
Yeah, and then we brought it down to like 20, but they call it a murder your children cut because every time you're shaving a minute off, it just hurts more and more because you just see it all shrink down. But like with this film,
even right now we're cutting a trailer for the film, and I'm editing with the guy editing the trailer because he's doing an amazing job, and I'm like, no, this thing's a minute long, right? We need this in this minute, and I'm sitting there arguing about the trailer because you only get one chance, right, to get a kind of a first impression of these things, and these guys knew that. That's why you took 24 months to make 2001: A Space Odyssey.
And with something like this, what's the runtime? 2 hours?
2 hours and 30.
2 hours 19 minutes.
2 hours 19
minutes.
Yeah.
Is that with the intermission?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, it was originally 19 minutes longer, by the way. The kind of definitive cut, and he just cut out kind of what he felt was mundane, everyday stuff of the film, and then on top of that, the editor or the special effects guy basically said that the original kind of assembly cut was something in the neighborhood of 100 hours, like 100 hours more than what the runtime is of this thing. And it's insane. I can only imagine how much more they've captured.
But then when you look at like what this is for like where it sits right now, especially looking at like shots and composition and then looking at everything that's there's again, with me, the big question is like, does this need to be here? What is it doing right now for the story? What is it doing right now for the entire film? And I mean, is it something that could be cut off or consolidated and all that? Like what can we do for this film? Because it's so long.
The biggest thing that I think guys like this teach us, Michael is my cinematographer and Austin is my editor, the biggest thing we go for is intentionality. Mm-hmm. What's the point? Why are we doing this? Why does this shot need to be here? Why does this word and this phrase of dialogue need to be here? We are trying to be as intentional as we possibly can with filmmaking, because that's what these guys did. That's what they did right. If they didn't do anything else right, intentionality was the name of the game. And I don't know why that's been lost.
For this it makes sense too, because if the intention was to make the best sci-fi movie out there, one of the sci-fis that really helped to visualize what good sci-fi was back then. I mean, if you're considering the novels that were popular back then, Asimov, Sagan, these were the science fiction authors who were creating things, and especially Arthur C. Clarke. The descriptions of things were long, vast. They were huge. Sometimes they were vague, and this feels like that. When I'm watching this, it feels like reading those classic sci-fi where they spent, an entire chapter just describing to you what the landscape of this futuristic world looks like, so that you can understand it and you feel more immersed as you're going through it. I feel like that intentionality is there, and especially if you like the classic sci-fi, you feel it. You feel it in this movie for sure.
You know what's crazy about this is we don't realize this because we don't look behind the curtain quite as often for something like this, but this is the most palatable version of this film collectively. I'm sure Kubrick sat with MGM, sat with whoever, and was like, this thing could be 4 hours long.
It could be a TV series.
It could be a TV series. It could be a docu-series, whatever. And we're going to get it to 2 hours and 19 minutes. Do you know how palatable that is for guys who watch Tarkovsky, or for guys who, you know what I'm saying? You know how easy that is? It's insane to me. It's insane to me that you can watch it 2 hours and 19 minutes and it may feel like a lifetime because you just lived a lifetime in 2 hours and 19 minutes, But it's the most palatable version of this film that's out.
Yeah.
And that's so rare, because half of the people say, well, we could cut out all the scenes at the end and we can cut out this so much, and then you're going to lose so much by cutting a frame of this film.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I love talking to you guys, but I feel like I'm taking too much time.
No,
you're fine. You're fine.
I have two other things that I want to touch
Go
on.
ahead.
So the first one, just because I think it's the most fun. If you've never seen this movie before and you didn't know any lore behind it, this movie is the reason that people believe Stanley Kubrick filmed the moon landing. That's one of the most popular conspiracy theories that comes from this movie. It's Stanley Kubrick made this, and the visuals were so advanced for the time that people believed they created this conspiracy theory that the moon landing didn't happen and that Stanley Kubrick filmed it on a Hollywood set.
So much so that there's a film that came out this year.
Yeah.
That Channing Tatum, Scarlett Johansson thing.
Oh, that's right.
Sitting on this theory, basically. Yeah,
take me to the
I
totally forgot that they made a whole movie about it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I always thought that's a fun fact.
I love it. I love that conspiracy theory as a whole. And what's crazy is that Kubrick, the minute they finished filming this film, depending on what side of the conspiracy theory you're on, said, let's burn the sets. Let's destroy everything, because I don't want some cheap B sci-fi movie to reuse my sets. That's why he did. That's why he was like, I don't want other cheapy filmmakers who don't care to reuse my sets. I don't want my spaceship to end up in some attack on Mars or whatever.
Didn't it end up
my
in
legacy.
Star Wars?
No, that was just stealing.
The little.
That was just stealing. There was nothing from a Kubrick, according to him.
Because when I saw Star Wars, in one of the opening scenes, it has like the little pot just thrown on the ground.
Maybe the trash compactor. I don't know. It's got all the scraps.
It's stealing, man. It's stealing at its best kind of level. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is true, because people were basically saying like they recycled sets for the moon landing to be able to film that. It's like, well, Kubrick claims that he destroyed everything, so people wouldn't do that. But who knows? I mean, if you see Dr. Strangelove, it looks like the moon landing so much.
It really does.
like the conversations.
The biggest thing on that is that when they show the moon landing footage, you can't see the stars.
There is scientific explanation.
I
for
know.
What was your other thing?
So the last thing that I wanted to touch on is the baby. Only because you're entirely right about the history and the way that it came through, and them writing the film and the novel at the same time. And if you've read the novel, if you've read 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I guess if you really want to go through all of the rest of the 2000 series, there's a lot of them. But I know 2001 specifically. One of the things that they talk about, one of the things that's like really prevalent, is that on Earth there is a big play for the nuclear arms race. There's a lot of nuclear activity happening, and supposedly once the baby comes to fruition, once the Star Child is created, this is sort of where I think I lean into the idea that it is extraterrestrials sort of navigating humanity through their time. So we see the monolith. The monolith, for whatever reason, however it winds up influencing the apes, it gets them to the point where they are able to use tools.
Right.
That is the next evolutionary step, right? From tools, we move into being able to create things, being able to do more things, being able to fight wars, and then exactly like you said, and I loved that, right? The transition of the bone flying up into the air and then immediately turning into the spaceship or whatever piece of space technology we're seeing. That, if it is housing the nuclear weapons like it's supposed to be, right? That goes again straight from the beginning of war, the very first time that we're experiencing war, which was finding a tool and being able to use that tool to beat my enemy so that I can take the watering hole, and then moving on to what a war has evolved into. And then the next time that we see the monolith, we're taking this person who and I'm not sure if this is entirely true. I know I remember hearing it in the commentary. He talks about how his character probably was the one that was chosen because of how calm he was able to be in the face of everything that he was experiencing, and so that was why they chose to evolve him, because they felt like he had the clarity and the capacity.
It's the book of Revelations in sci-fi, right? Like it's God showing you what's going to happen to humanity if you can handle it.
And then it's interesting because he turns into the baby, and the baby in the book is supposed to be a nuclear deterrent. Once the baby hits the atmosphere, it destroys all of the nuclear arms that are being stored in space. And it basically brings a sort of like new peace for humanity. And I remember one of the lines that I'd read that I think stuck with me, and this is the last thing that I'll end on here because I thought it was very important for the film or for my interpretation of it. The line was, the first evolutionary step that we take is learning war, and the last step is learning to abandon it. And that's sort of what we hit at the very end of the film there. So those are my thoughts. But I've always loved the film. Like I said, I saw it a bunch of times when I first saw it. I've loved it for a long time. I loved getting to hear you guys talk about it and all the different interpretations from first-time viewers. I love being here. I'm stoked that there's 100 episodes, and I'm stoked that you're back at Aaron and George's because I'm going to be here every time you guys are here.
I love it.
Thank you for doing this, letting us watch movies with you. Thank you.
Question to you. Have you seen the sequel?
The
2010. Exactly.
I love the last.
Exactly. I'm like, what? From this to that? Right, it's not compared, right?
No. But few things do. When you create something as iconic as this, something that literally gets passed down.
Why it's bad? Because
culture,
a good filmmaker knew not to tackle it.
Right, exactly. Anybody else would have been like, I'm not going to make a sequel to that thing. I'm not going to make a sequel to the thing that literally pop culture has been, talking about for years and years and years. Like, I'm sure a lot of you first timers have probably seen some of these scenes or some things referencing this before you'd seen this movie, right? Because it is so iconic. Yeah. So many people have made fun of it. Same as Star Wars, they've made fun of it, they've homaged it, whatever it's been in the zeitgeist for a long time because it's that fucking good. Yeah. So,
Chris, thank you so much, man.
Chris, we love you, man. We love you.
You want to start getting into our ratings?
Yeah, I think we should start getting into our ratings. Just
any last calls or?
Any last calls? Anybody?
Any last calls? Final calls before we get into our brief ratings. Ratings. Whose pick was this? Mine?
It was a collective pick. I think Austin should go first.
I think Austin should go first also. He's the first time viewer. First time in a long time.
First time, long time. I honestly don't have a rating.
You don't have a rating?
No. I'm still processing
Yeah, he's still processing. He was texting us.
We had like 5 people talk.
Five first timers talk.
And they all had processed it.
I genuinely don't have one. I'm still
really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I'll give my rating.
We broke Austin?
Yeah.
This is the first film that breaks Austin.
Yeah?
No, wait. I showed him that video that I made about my feelings.
No.
That
was good.
I give that a 2.
Damn. Wait, Jason. Don't you have an interpretation?
Kubrick was a reptilian.
All right. Well, you had it first.
Probably true.
Probably true. I agree.
Castro, do you want to go first then?
I'll give it a 9.9.
9.9.
9.9.
Yeah, I don't know why I won't give it a 10, but
Because you could have done better. Is that what you're saying?
no, I'm just always expecting the best. Every time I watch this film, it's always like an experience, like a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I always like leave it with wondering more, I guess, asking more questions. I like the whole psychology of it. I'm a big fan of just space, and especially how Stanley Kubrick thought how it's gonna be in the future. I'm just fascinated in the little details. But
Space coffee.
Space coffee.
space coffee, space sandwiches. I love the soundtrack, the score. Not the soundtrack, the score. Yeah, man. Especially this time
That's
I
weird,
saw
man. It might be a score. These songs existed before. It might be a
I feel like a
soundtrack.
score.
I mean, like
Is it a
these songs.
jukebox musical?
Kind of, yeah.
Wasn't there like something that Kubrick wanted to show this without the visuals, just with the soundtrack?
Oh, I don't know about
I heard
that.
something like that.
I don't know what
Really?
terms he did.
Show it
Maybe.
But
without the visuals, just sound.
yeah.
But yeah, I'll give it a 9.9. I think it's
Dang.
for cinema. It did a really big thing for other movies.
Fair.
Very big thing.
Very
big
good thing.
Are you gonna go next,
I can.
or do you want to go last?
I don't care. You want me to go next or
Rock
last?
paper scissors.
Sure. First rock paper scissors on
Okay.
the.
1, 2, 3. Wait, we didn't. Do you want me to count or?
Yes,
I was
you're
like,
already
okay,
counting.
5.
There we go.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
There you go.
you
So
go.
what does that mean? I go first?
No.
No, you had scissors. He had rock.
Well, I understand, but does that mean I go first or you go first? You won.
You didn't want to go first?
I don't care.
Let's go outside
I'll
and
go.
do a race really quick.
Yeah. We'll be back there. This is a 10 for me. This is a 10. It took some time to get to a 10 for me.
Episode 30, you gave it like a 6.
Probably, yeah. I probably wouldn't give it a 6, but I knew it needed more interpretation. I know it needed more viewings. And by the way, I haven't even read the novel. I haven't gone that far into the lore of it, and I don't want to. I don't want the clarification. And I think that's what I love about this film is I don't need it. I think I can be content with living with this film for the rest of my life and having my own interpretations, plural, of it throughout life. And there's very few cinema that can do that for me. There's very few cinema. And my like top 10 changes year after year after year. And usually the films that end up making it into my top 10 have been films that have surpassed the art of cinema to become something else.
Irishman?
It's not in my top 10.
Well, it was.
No, it wasn't. It's never been in my top 10. But films like this, films like In the Mood for Love, things that are just so inexplainable and ineffable that I need to sit for the rest of my life and view them in a good way. And I think that's what 2001: A Space Odyssey does me. Sure, I can get into the history of cinema and how influential this thing was, and you've heard that before. But for me, as a human living on Earth in 2024, this film is massively expansive. And it's weird. It's just this weird, like juxtaposition and serendipitous collection of moments where this film existed in '68 to now, and how we can experience it now. And it means so much. It's almost more relevant now. And the more time advances, the more relevant it's going to become. But it's also going to become so far removed from humanity because nobody knows what the future holds, and that's insane. I don't know where on my top 10 it sits, but I know that this thing, every screening tells me something more about the film, more about life, more about Kubrick, and more on why people revere him so much. And again, like everybody from Kurosawa to Fellini to Spielberg and beyond, and Marty, my hero, says so much about Kubrick. What I love about Marty's response to 2001: A Space Odyssey is Kubrick did something so like rare. He gave us a new interpretation of humanity and time, and that's never been done before. And he lived through this in real time. He saw this thing in real time. And what I love about somebody like Marty is like, I'm not going to sit here and try to explain it to you. I can't. That's the bottom line, is I can't explain the entity that Kubrick was, and I can't explain the entity that 2001: A Space Odyssey is. And that's so special. And it's not like so artsy and so experimental that it's like, it's just experimental and I'm going to leave it to that. It's true blue, pure cinema that will live on forever. So 10.
10. I think it's gonna have to be a 10 also. Just the fact that we're able to experience a movie that again, like you were explaining earlier, Danny, just it almost feels like a painting, a piece of art that you can sit with, you can interpret a million times, you can come up with a million different ways to look at it, and I think a great film should be able to do that. I think great cinema should be able to do that, where you don't just want to look at it one time and say like, oh, okay, I figured it out. It's a little puzzle. It was kind of tricky, and then there we are. It's something that you want to be able to just palate, and again, visit year after year. And the fact that something so transcendent of form of the screen, it just it's special. It's one of the main reasons why for like 100th we were like, we have to do this film, because out of all the films we've seen, out of all the films that we've interpreted, and the different angles and different lenses we've looked at, nothing really has compared to something like this, where everybody, even people who don't understand what the film's about, you still sit with it thinking like, where is this all going for myself? More than just the film, what does all this mean in a grander scale? What is life? What is the future? What's the space baby? I think, I go to bed at night thinking about the space baby.
I think that's that line from Ready Player One for me defines kind of what this does for us who give it a 10. It's that thing that Lex Luthor says, they're quoting Lex Luthor. He says, some people can read War and Peace and come away thinking it's a simple adventure story. Others can read the ingredients on the chewing gum wrapper and unlock the secrets of the universe. Yeah. I think good cinema is that depends how you interpret it. And you can see a non-tangible film like this and be like, never can I explain this. And then you can watch something simple. And I'm pretty sure Kubrick came up with this idea by reading a short story, but he went to the World's Fair and saw a documentary on what the Earth looks like, because that's what existed at the time. And you see a film like that and unlock the secrets of the universe. You see a little 20-minute documentary on Earth and what shade of blue it might be, and then that expanded Kubrick's mind to make something like this. I think that's so special. I think it's so special of all the filmmakers we admire, the Wesses and the Martys and the Finchers, like this, and then the Nolans, who like Nolan, this is his favorite film of all time also. And you see it across his work.
M. Night,
no. But yeah, Unlocking the Secrets of the Universe. That's the name of this episode. I think good cinema.
Well, wasn't that going to be the original title? Beyond the Stars or something like that?
Monkey Spaceman Time.
Monkey Spaceman Time. I like Monkey Spaceman Time. Yeah. I like your 10.
What a fun episode. This was nice.
I was kind of scared to pick this one because, like you said, the new generation has a short attention span.
That's why we got to keep it alive.
Look at us. Do we look like the new generation? Well,
That's why we got to keep it alive. That's why we got to keep it. And by the way, 2001: A Space Odyssey doesn't need us to keep it alive, but there is cinema out there that does. That being said, before we wrap up the episode, I want to encourage everybody that the release of this episode will be in 2 days on the 11th, 12th, on Monday. And it's August in El Paso. Go to the El Paso Film Festival next month.
Yes.
And any arts and film situations happening in your city, we're going to be there showing our latest short film at the El Paso Film Festival. And you guys are getting that first year. We haven't even made that public yet. But we'll be at the El Paso Film Festival. Go out and support cinema. Go out and support local cinema. And they're bringing in a lot of really great films from all over the world.
And support Aaron and George's Film Cafe. Thank you
again,
Aaron
and George's Film Cafe,
for hosting us once again. Oh, it's so good to be back.
So good to be back. And we're in conversation with Doug and Rebecca already. We're going to be back here on a monthly basis again. We didn't do that for a while because, craziness happening in the city of El Paso. Lots of stuff going on, which you guys will find out about soon publicly. But also just Aaron and George just went through a lot of changes and renovations and craziness. So we're so happy they're back. We'll be back here monthly. I think right now we're eyeing every second Tuesday of the month. Friday. Sorry, I'm sorry. Friday. Every second Friday of the month. So just stay tuned for those announcements and what films and that type of jazz.
And thank you all for sticking around. We know that we talked for quite a while and then this was a long movie, but thank you guys for coming again. Big round.
Thanks for everybody stuck around. stay tuned on the upcoming months. We're going to be doing Western months next, and then we'll jump into Halloween
trilogy.
picks and trilogy. Sorry, you're right, trilogy. We've got two great trilogies. We're doing Back to the Future and the Three Colors trilogy. Those are two trilogies we're going to cover.
Next week is semi-pro.
Next week is semi-pro
That's
for.
what's
Of course, I picked that.
We went from
2001 is
Both
Space Odyssey.
masterpieces in the row.
Exactly. There we go.
I wouldn't go
throw
that
that in
far,
there.
Yeah,
but
so-
it is wrapping up our comedy month,
The
and then we get into
spiritual sequel to 2001 Space Odyssey.
Semi-pro,
semi-pro.
Jackie
Yeah.
Boone.
And then we'll get into
You're a
trilogies.
coach.
We'll
You're-
get into westerns, and then we go into Halloween
And the
picks,
beyond.
and the beyond. So just stay
Yay.
tuned for all those announcements. Let us know. We have like a huge list already. I think like 20 or 30 films that people have sent in as requests, and we're gonna tackle them like crazy throughout kind of the end of the year.
But not the Barbie ones. Not the. I'm just
Yeah. No, but definitely like starting January for sure, we're gonna like tackle crazy.
Yeah.
We're gonna have specific like request months. So send us in your requests through like social media or our emails or whatever. And I promise you, we do add them to the list and try to figure out where we can put them in the
We
schedule.
definitely do, yeah.
Other than that, stay tuned for other Aaron and George's live cafes from the Towercast and the WatchTower Film Podcast.
Yeah, and all the other events that Aaron and George put
Yes,
on.
absolutely. Come out and support them through and through. Doug.
Love
Thank
you,
you, man.
Doug.
All right. I think that's it for today. Thank you for tuning into the WatchTower Film Podcast. Thank you for coming in live, and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Love you guys.
Hey.